darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to an evening edition of the All Het No Cattle News Rodeo. Specifically tonight, we will be covering 46 asterisks. First address to what would almost be a joint session of Congress. Instead, we find out that only 200 of the 536 Congress critters will be there tonight. They were hand-selected by one Speaker Pelosi. Because of COVID restrictions and security concerns, which of course means that bomb-throwing Republicans cannot be anywhere near the president. I mean, they've all had their shot, so the whole COVID thing is out the window. That makes zero sense whatsoever. Every one of those Congress critters is fully vaccinated. Every single one of them. And last I heard, 46 asterisk has been as well, has been fully vaccinated since at least December. But who are we to judge? Now, I've been doing some research all day today regarding things that I knew were going to come up tonight. Got a little cheat sheet right here on what happens when you raise the capital gains tax. Specifically what happened when Reagan did it back in the 80s. And an interesting, what's what I'm looking for, contradiction to that general wisdom, but I have an explanation for it, and that's what happened back in the second term of the Obama administration. But we will get into that after the speech. What I'm planning on doing is letting Biden bloviate, have the chat take after him in real time. I will be taking notes, plus the things I have already put together, and I'll try to rebut the points as they come up in order, as they came up in order, I should say, and we'll talk about them. I've got my notepad, I've got my pen, or as was said in the famous video, Hot for Teacher, I should say. I almost said Back to School. Hot for Teacher by Van Halen. I've got my pencil. So there we go. One of the great videos of all time. Anyway, I've got a little bit of news. I am late because OBS blanked the bed when I went to go live. It refused to launch, and then when I restarted it, all of the extra channels I have set up in the plugin to simulcast on, YouTube and Trovo being the ones I would use tonight, disappeared. And every time it failed to launch, they would disappear again. So it honestly took me 4 tries. I don't know what happened that finally fixed it. Well, again, once it went full screen and I couldn't shrink it back down. Hitting F11, hitting escape, no matter. I couldn't shrink it back down. It was full screen. I couldn't see a thing. So thank you, OBS, for making my life miserable. You are so great in so many ways, but man, when you screw up, you really make life a living hell. But God bless you nonetheless. Anyway, so we don't have a lot of time to talk about the things I've pulled up, but as David has mentioned in the chat, we have something pulled up here on the screen, and that is an RIP for one truly great man, a pioneer, and that is Michael Collins, known as the Forgotten Astronaut. Michael Collins died today at 90 after a long battle with cancer. Michael Collins was the 3rd member of the Apollo 11 crew, the first manned mission to land on the moon. Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong were the famous guys. They're the ones who got to walk around on the moon. They spent about 22 hours on the lunar surface. Well, while they were down there, Michael Collins was orbiting the moon in the command module, and that was the spacecraft that housed them during their trip to and back from the moon, and helped transport the lunar module to the moon. It undocked from the command module after Aldrin and Aldrin and Armstrong had transferred from the command module into the LEM, Lunar Excursion Module, and made their descent. And then the LEM came up from the moon, minus its undercarriage, and redocked with the command module, and they came back in. They jettisoned the LEM sometime later and returned to Earth. But Michael Collins was the one keeping track of Armstrong and Aldrin on the moon and relaying important data from them to mission control when possible. He was really their lifeline, and if anything happened to Michael Collins or to the command module, that would have been it. Aldrin and Armstrong would have died on the moon. That's it. So really, Michael Collins was the reason they were able to get back. If they had not had a command module pilot on board when those guys were on the moon, and anything went wrong with the command module that couldn't have been fixed from Houston, that would have been it. We probably never would have gone back to the moon. So he was really the key to the whole success of that mission. Granted, Neil Armstrong, if he hadn't taken over the controls of the Lunar Excursion Module and hand-flown it onto its landing spot in the Sea of Tranquility, he and Aldrin would have died because the program was going to have it land in a field of rocks that would have tipped it over. But Michael Collins, very prominent astronaut. He was the part of the 3rd crew to be selected by NASA. He flew first on Gemini 10, and then his one Apollo trip was Apollo 11. And he was a hell of a pilot. Interesting fact, his whole family were Army. He had high-ranking officers from the Army in his family, but as he put it, he snuck off to join the Air Force. So God bless you. Michael Collins, and rest your soul. All right. Oh, I don't have the White House feed pulled up. I just realized that. I did not have the White House feed pulled up. Boy, I'm glad I noticed that. All right, let me do that real quickly here. I got to do a couple housekeeping things to get this right. All right, let's see here. My sincerest apologies for not having this done already. And by the way, thank you for choosing the channel tonight. There are a ton of people out there doing this right now. Steven Crowder's fact checking it. Blaze TV themselves are checking it. Lots and lots and lots of folks are having live streams tonight for this. And I am honored that you would spend it with us here. So thank you so much. Let's see, I think C-SPAN should have it. Yeah, here we go. All right, looking at the C-SPAN.
State Farm because of this site. They had me paying $163 a month.
There we go. Okay, skip that ad. All right, so they've gone live. They just introduced Dr. Jill. Real quickly, looking at the likes and dislikes. 1.2 thousand likes, 4.9 thousand dislikes. Make that 4.9 thousand and 1 dislikes. I'll scroll this to the side. We'll wait until asterisk comes up before we switch over. Let me resize the screen here. I'll keep an eye on that. Yeah, I am. I'm going to try not to yell tonight. My new medication seems to be working slightly. I'm on half dose right now, but it does seem to be taking a bit of the edge off. So maybe I won't completely lose it tonight, but I cannot guarantee it. But that is very unprofessional of me when I do that. Certainly not fair to your ears, much less anything else. But before 46 asterisk gets to take this completely barren stage, I have a great Babylon Bee for you. I almost didn't do one tonight, but this one is so perfect I couldn't resist. And I have a story coming up after it that I can hopefully get to that will place it perfectly. And this is from their politics section. Cuomo regretting killing all those elderly after losing House seat. Dateline Albany, New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo is disappointed after census data revealed his state had lost thousands of citizens, causing New York to lose a seat in the House of Representatives. Quoting the governor in between bites of his spicy meatball sub, "Yeah, I guess I shouldn't have murdered 15,000 elderly residents in nursing homes by forcing them to admit COVID patients. Maybe, in hindsight, I could have done better." He continued, "Or at least, maybe if I could have gotten 89 more of those old people to fill out a census form before dying, I could have prevented this." Cuomo then finished his meatball sub and began plowing into a large bowl of spaghetti. Critics of the governor insisted that 15,000 precious human lives were worth infinitely more than just a seat in Congress, but Cuomo was unable to hear them due to chewing his food too loudly. Cuomo was promising new initiatives to ensure more people fill out the census as they should in order to counteract all the people dying and leaving his state in record numbers. Babylon Bee, everyone. Now, the reason I brought that Babylon Bee to fore today is because this story appeared in the New York Times today. And I, of course, have an archive version of it here. Cuomo aides spent months hiding nursing home death toll. The subheading is, aides to the New York governor, Andrew Cuomo, repeatedly prevented state health officials from releasing the number of nursing home deaths in the pandemic. And this is Dateline just this afternoon by J. David Goodman, Jesse McKinley, and Danny Hakim. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. It says here, Aides were repeatedly overruling state health officials over a span of at least 5 months, trying to obscure the pandemic death toll in New York nursing homes, according to interviews and newly unearthed documents. Mr. Cuomo's most senior aides engaged in a sustained effort to prevent the state's own health officials, including the commissioner, Howard Zucker, from releasing the true death toll to the public or sharing it with state lawmakers, these interviews and documents showed. A scientific paper incorporating the data was never published. An audit of the numbers by a top Cuomo aide was finished months before it became publicly known. 2 letters drafted by the health department and meant for state legislators were never sent. And there's more to it, obviously. You can read that at your leisure. But, so, bad news there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go full screen with the man who's entering at the moment. I believe that's him. Let me go ahead and change screens here. Just a second. There we go. Kill this. All right, and I will expand it. There we go. Oh, I'm sorry. I got the wrong person. Well, it's fine. It's fine. I didn't have a lot of time for the rest of the news anyway. So let me get to what I wanted to talk about. Tonight's address. Let me preface this a little bit. Yesterday we heard from a story that I read from the New York Times that a recording between current Iranian Foreign Minister Zaif, I believe his name is, or Zarif, Zarif, and an Iranian economist, who was doing an interview for a historical record of the Iranian regime. There were many things said during that interview, an interview that was ultimately leaked to a dissident Iranian paper published out of Great Britain, and then details lent to the New York Times and other newspapers and other outlets. And we were told that, among other things, Zarif said that the military was setting foreign policy for the Iranian government, them and the mullahs, as opposed to the foreign ministry, that Zarif was often out of the loop when it came to policy decisions, and that he had personal battles with now deceased General Soleimani, former head of the Quds forces, as Soleimani was often trying to negate things that Zarif was doing. Most specifically, trying to reach a deal with the Biden administration at the time for the ultimate JCPOA, or as our current president puts it, JOCPA. The Iranians and the Americans were working together on this deal, and the Russians didn't want that to happen. The Russians wanted Iran to stay under their hegemony, and Soleimani was working with the Russians against the rest of the Iranian government, and especially against Zarif. Now, that's bad. And yes, they do all look stupid. They do all look very stupid. But that wasn't the worst of it, although this is the part that is being the least reported. But I did bring it up yesterday, and I want to bring it up again. Zarif told the interviewer that John Kerry told him personally about Israeli attacks on Iranian interested formations in Syria, including Iranian artillery batteries and things like this, that Israel had performed over 200 attacks on those in secret, and the Iranians did not know who had launched the attacks. And Kerry told them it was the Israelis. Now, there's Sleepy Joe. We do know that Kerry was lobbying the Iranians to not buckle and do a deal with the Trump administration, that just hang on, they'll be gone, we'll get them out of office, and we'll give you everything you want, just to come back and do what we want you to do. Come back and do what you want us to do. Fist bumps. fist bumps. They're all vaccinated and they're doing fist bumps. And he's wearing a mask. Oh, God. So looking at the chat real quickly. Let's see. Dave Von Kettering just mentions the mask, as I did. Cutesy Half Waves from... I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. I'm not going to say that. By the way, I am going to try to do the whole show tonight on all three platforms: YouTube, Trovo, and DLive. I do. But anyway, so we heard this about Kerry yesterday, and then we hear this morning about all of the January 6 rioters who are still being held in solitary confinement, although the DOJ is using alternative language for that. I think they're calling it special housing. They're only being allowed to see their lawyers for a few minutes a day. And we're going to be told tonight that January 6th was the worst attack on the United States since the Civil War. And what happened this morning? Rudy Giuliani had his apartment and his office raided and his electronic items taken by the FBI, and they're going after his communications between himself and John Solomon. What do you think of that? Do you think this is a smokescreen? Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good to be back. As Mitch and Chuck will understand, it's good to be almost home. Down the hall. Anyway, thank you all. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President. No president has ever said those words from this podium. No president has ever said those words. And it's about time. First Lady, I'm her husband. Second Gentleman, Chief Justice, members of the United States Congress and the Cabinet, distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. While the setting tonight is familiar, this gathering is just a little bit different. A reminder of the extraordinary times we're in. Throughout our history, presidents have come to this chamber to speak to Congress, to the nation, and to the world, to declare war, to celebrate peace, to announce new plans and possibilities. I come to talk about crisis and opportunity, about rebuilding the nation, revitalizing our democracy, and winning the future for America. I stand here tonight of the 100th day of my administration. 100 days since I took the oath of office and lifted my hand off our family Bible and inherited a nation, we all did, that was in crisis. The worst pandemic in a century. The worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. The worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. Now, after just 100 days, I can report to the nation, America is on the move again. Turning peril into possibility, crisis to opportunity, setbacks into strength. We all know life can knock us down, but in America, we never, ever, ever stay down. Americans always get up. Today, that's what we're doing. America's rising anew, choosing hope over fear, truth over lies, and light over darkness. After 100 days of rescue and renewal, America is ready for a takeoff, in my view. We're working again, dreaming again, discovering again, and leading the world again. We have shown each other and the world that there's no quit in America, none. 100 days ago, America's house was on fire. We had to act. And thanks to the extraordinary leadership of Speaker Pelosi, Majority Leader Schumer, and the overwhelming support of the American people, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, we did act. Together we passed the American Rescue Plan, one of the most consequential rescue packages in American history. We're already seeing the results. We're already seeing the results. After I promised we'd get 100 million COVID-19 vaccine shots into people's arms in 100 days, we will have provided over 220 million COVID shots in those 100 days. Thanks to all the help of all of you. We're marshaling, with your help, everyone's help, we're marshaling every federal resource. We've gotten vaccines to nearly 40,000 pharmacies and over 700 community health centers where the poorest of the poor can be reached. We're setting up community vaccination sites, developing mobile units to get to hard-to-reach communities. Today, 90% of Americans now live within 5 miles of a vaccination site. Everyone over the age of 16, everyone is now eligible to get vaccinated right now, right away. Go get vaccinated, America. Go and get the vaccination. They're available. You're eligible now. When I was sworn in on January 20th, less than 1% of the seniors in America were fully vaccinated against COVID-19. 100 days later, 70% of seniors in America over 65 are protected, fully protected. Senior deaths from COVID-19 are down 80% since January, down 80% because of all of you. And more than half of all the adults in America have gotten at least one shot. A mass vaccination center in Glendale, Arizona, I asked the nurse, I said, "What's it like?" She looked at me and she said, "It's like every shot is giving a dose of hope."
Oh, God.
A dose of hope. A dose of hope for an educator in Florida who has a child suffering from an autoimmune disease. Wrote to me, said she was worried about bringing the virus home. She said she then got vaccinated at a large site in her car. She said she sat in her car when she got vaccinated and just cried. Cried out of joy and cried out of relief. Parents, seeing the smiles on their kids' faces for those who are able to go back to school because the teachers and school bus drivers and cafeteria workers have been vaccinated. Grandparents, hugging their children and grandchildren instead of pressing hands against the window to say goodbye. It means everything. Those things mean everything. You know, there's still, you all know it, you know it better than any group of Americans, there's still more work to do to beat this virus. We can't let our guard down. But tonight, I can say, because of you, the American people, our progress these past 100 days against one of the worst pandemics in history has been one of the greatest logistical achievements this country's ever seen. What else have we done in those first 100 days? We kept our commitment, Democrats and Republicans, of sending $1,400 rescue checks to 85% of American households. We've already sent more than 160 million checks out the door. It's making a difference. You all know it when you go home. for many people, it's making all the difference in the world. A single mom in Texas who wrote me, she said she couldn't work, but she said the relief check put food on the table and saved her and her son from eviction from their apartment. A grandmother in Virginia who told me she immediately took her granddaughter to the eye doctor, something she said she put off for months because she didn't have the money. One of the defining images, at least from my perspective in this crisis, has been cars lined up for miles. And not people just barely able to start those cars, nice cars, lined up for miles, waiting for a box of food to be put in their trunk. I don't know about you, but I didn't ever think I'd see that in America. And all of this is through no fault of their own.
No, just follow the Democrats.
No fault of their own, these people are in this position. That's why the rescue plan is delivering food and nutrition assistance to millions of Americans facing hunger. And hunger is down sharply already. We're also providing rental assistance. You all know this, but the American people, I want to make sure they understand. Keeping people from being evicted from their homes. Providing loans to small businesses that reopen and keep their employees on the job. During these 100 days, an additional 800,000 Americans enrolled in the Affordable Care Act when I established a special sign-up period to do that. 800,000 in that period. We're making one of the largest one-time investments ever in improving health care for veterans. Critical investments to address the opioid crisis. And maybe most importantly, thanks to the American Rescue Plan, we're on track to cut child poverty in America in half this year.
You had 8 years and you increased childhood poverty, Joe. Remember that? Remember you guys increased poverty by millions? Any comment on that?
And in the process, while this was all going on, the economy created more than 1,300,000 new jobs in 100 days. More jobs in the first...
Those weren't new jobs. Those were old jobs that have been taken away by Democrats.
More jobs in the first 100 days than any president on record. The International Monetary Fund...
Yeah, the vaccines had nothing to do with that, huh, Joe? The vaccines that you didn't create.
The International Monetary Fund is now estimating our economy will grow at a rate of more than 6% this year. That will be the fastest pace of economic growth in this country in nearly 4 decades. America's moving forward, but we can't stop now. We're in competition with China and other countries to win the 21st century. We're at a great inflection point in history. We have to do more than just build back better. We have to build back better. We have to compete more strenuously than we have. Throughout our history, if you think about it, public investment in infrastructure has literally transformed America, our attitudes as well as our opportunities. The Transcontinental Railroad, the interstate highways, united 2 oceans and brought a totally new age of progress to the United States of America. Universal public schools and college aid opened wide the doors of opportunity. Scientific breakthroughs took us to the moon. Now we're on Mars, discovering vaccines, gave us the internet, and so much more. These are investments we made together as one country, and investments that only the government was in a position to make. Time and again, they propel us into the future. That's why I proposed the American Jobs Plan, a once-in-a-generation investment in America itself. This is the largest jobs plan since World War II. Creates jobs to upgrade our transportation infrastructure. Jobs modernizing our roads, bridges, highways. Jobs building ports and airports, rail corridors, transit lines. It's clean water. And today, Up to 10 million homes in America and more than 400,000 schools and child care centers have pipes with lead in them, including drinking water. A clear and present danger to our children's health.
Where were you
American
8 years
Jobs
ago?
Plan creates jobs replacing 100% of the nation's lead pipes and service lines, so every American can drink clean water. And in the process, it will create thousands and thousands of good-paying jobs. It creates jobs connecting every American with high-speed internet, including 35% of the rural America that still doesn't have it. This is going to help our kids and our businesses succeed in the 21st century economy. And I'm asking the Vice President to lead this effort, if she would, because I know it will get done. Creates jobs building a modern power grid. Our grids are vulnerable to storms, hacks, catastrophic failures with tragic results, as we saw in Texas and elsewhere during the winter storms. The American Jobs Plan will create jobs that lay thousands of miles of transmission lines needed to build a resilient and fully clean grid. We can do that. Look, the American Jobs Plan will help millions of people get back to their jobs and back to their careers. 2 million women have dropped out of the workforce during this pandemic. 2 million. And too often because they couldn't get the care they needed to care for their child or care for an elderly parent who needs help. 800,000 families are on the Medicare waiting list right now to get home care for their aging parent or loved one with disability. If you think it's not important, check out in your own district, Democrat or Republican. Democrat or Republican voters. Their great concern, almost as much as their children, is taking care of an elderly loved one who can't be left alone. Medicaid contemplated it, but this plan is going to help those families and create jobs for our caregivers with better wages and better benefits, continuing a cycle of growth. For too long, we've failed to use the most important word when it comes to meeting the climate crisis: jobs. 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 For me, when I think climate change, I think jobs. The American Jobs Plan will put engineers and construction workers to work building more energy-efficient buildings and homes. Electrical workers, IBEW members installing 500,000 charging stations along our highways so we can own the electric car market. Farmers planting cover crops so they can reduce the carbon dioxide in the air and get paid for doing it. Look, think about it. There is simply no reason why the blades for wind turbines can't be built in Pittsburgh instead of Beijing. No reason. None. No reason. So, folks, there's no reason why American workers can't lead the world in the production of electric vehicles and batteries. I mean, there is no reason. We have the capacity. We're the brightest, best trained people in the world. The American Jobs Plan is going to create millions of good-paying jobs, jobs Americans can raise a family on. As my dad would then say, with a little breathing room. And all the investments in the American Job Plan will be guided by one principle: buy American. Buy American. And I might note parenthetically, that does not violate any trade agreement. It's been the law since the 30s, buy American. American tax dollars are going to be used to buy American products made in America to create American jobs. That's the way it's supposed to be, and it will be in this administration. And I made it clear to all my cabinet people, their ability to give exemptions has been strenuously limited. It will be American products. Now, I know some of you at home are wondering whether these jobs are for you. So many of you, so many of the folks I grew up with, feel left behind, forgotten, in an economy that's so rapidly changing. It's frightening. I want to speak directly to you, because you think about it. That's what people are most worried about. Can I fit in? Independent experts estimate the American Jobs Plan will add millions of jobs and trillions of dollars to economic growth in the years to come. It is an 8-year program. These are good-paying jobs that can't be outsourced. Nearly 90% of the infrastructure jobs created in the American Jobs Plan do not require a college degree. 75% don't require an associate's degree. The American Jobs Plan is a blue-collar blueprint to build America. That's what it is. And it recognizes something I've always said in this chamber and the other. Good guys and women on Wall Street, but Wall Street didn't build this country. The middle class built the country, and unions built the middle class. So that's why I'm calling on Congress to pass Protect the Right to Organize Act, the PRO Act, and send it to my desk so we can support the right to unionize. And by the way, while you're thinking about sending things to my desk, let's raise the minimum wage to $15. No one working 40 hours a week, no one working 40 hours a week should live below the poverty line. We need to ensure greater equity and opportunity for women. And while we're doing this, let's get the Paycheck Fairness Act to my desk as well. Equal pay. It's been much too long.
Oh.
And if you wonder whether it's too long, look behind me.
Oh, God, are you kidding me? Equal pay? Are you kidding me?
The American Jobs Plan will be the biggest increase in non-defense research and development on record. We'll see more technological change, and some of you know more about this than I do. We'll see more technological change in the next 10 years than we saw in the last 50. That's how rapidly artificial intelligence and so much more is changing. And we're falling behind the competition with the rest of the world. Decades ago, we used to invest 2% of our gross domestic product in America, 2% of our gross domestic product in research and development. Today, Mr. Secretary, that's less than 1%. China and other countries are closing in fast. We have to develop and dominate the products and technologies of the future. Advanced batteries, biotechnology, computer chips, clean energy. The Secretary of Defense can tell you, and those of you who work in national security issues know, the Defense Department has an agency called DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. The people who set up before I came here, and that's been a long time ago, to develop breakthroughs that enhance our national security. That's their only job. And it's a semi-separate agency. It's under the Defense Department. It's led to everything from the discovery of the internet to GPS and so much more that's enhanced our security. The National Institute of Health, the NIH, I believe, should create a similar advanced research projects agency for health. And here's what it would do. It would have a singular purpose: to develop breakthroughs to prevent, detect, and treat diseases like Alzheimer's, diabetes, and cancer. I'll still never forget when we passed the cancer proposal the last year I was vice president. Almost $9 million going to NIH. And if you excuse the point of personal privilege, I'll never forget you standing, Mitch, and saying, "Name it after my deceased son." It meant a lot. But so many of us have deceased sons, daughters, and relatives who died of cancer. I can think of no more worthy investment. I know of nothing that is more bipartisan. So let's end cancer as we know it. It's within our power. It's within our power to do it. Investments in jobs and infrastructure like the ones we're talking about have often had bipartisan support in the past. Vice President Harris and I met regularly in the Oval Office with Democrats and Republicans and discussed the jobs plan. And I applaud a group of Republican senators who just put forward their own proposal. So let's get to work. I wanted to lay out before the Congress my plan before we got into the deep discussions. I'd like to meet with those who have ideas that are different, they think are better. I welcome those ideas. But the rest of the world is not waiting for us. I just want to be clear. From my perspective, doing nothing is not an option. Look, we can't be so busy competing with one another that we forget the competition that we have with the rest of the world to win the 21st century. Secretary Blinken can tell you, I spent a lot of time with President Xi. Traveled over 17,000 miles with him. Spent, they tell me, over 24 hours in private discussions with him.
Yeah, and what'd you get out of it, Joe?
When he called to congratulate him, we had a 2-hour discussion.
Did you talk about COVID?
He's deadly earnest about becoming the most significant, consequential nation in the world. He and others, autocrats, think that democracy can't compete in the 21st century with autocracies. It takes too long to get consensus. To win that competition for the future, in my view, we also need to make a once-in-a-generation investment in our families and our children. That's why I've introduced the American Families Plan tonight, which addresses 4 of the biggest challenges facing American families and in turn America. First is access to good education. When this nation made 12 years of public education universal in the last century, it made us the best educated, best prepared nation in the world. It's, I believe, the overwhelming reason that propelled us to where we got in the 20th century. But the world's caught up or catching up. They're not waiting. I would say parenthetically, if we were sitting down, we set a bipartisan committee together and said, okay, we're going to decide what we do in terms of government providing for free education.
Bipartisan.
I wonder whether we'd think, as we did in the 20th century, that 12 years is enough in the 21st century. I doubt it. 12 years is no longer enough today to compete with the rest of the world in the 21st century. That's why my American Families Plan guarantees 4 additional years of public education for every person in America, starting as early as we can. The great universities in this country have conducted studies of the last 10 years. It shows that adding 2 years of universal high-quality preschool for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old, no matter what background they come from, puts them in the position to be able to compete all the way through 12 years and increases exponentially their prospect of graduating and going on beyond graduation. The research shows when a young child goes to school, not daycare, they're far more likely to graduate from high school and go to college or something after high school. When you add 2 years of free community college on top of that, you begin to change the dynamic. We can do that. And we'll increase Pell Grants and invest in historical black colleges and universities, tribal colleges, minority-serving institutions. The reason is they don't have the endowments. But their students are just as capable of learning about cybersecurity, just as capable of learning about metallurgy, all the things that are going on that provide those jobs of the future. Jill is a community college professor who teaches today as First Lady. She's long said,
Oh, you got to be kidding me. A standing ovation for a community college teacher? Seriously?
If I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. Joe, any country that out-educates us is going to out-compete us. She'll be deeply involved in leading this effort. Thank you, Jill. Second thing we need, American Families Plan will provide access to quality, affordable child care. We guarantee when I'm proposing the legislation, we guarantee that low and middle income families will pay no more than 7% of their income for high quality care for children up to the age of 5. The most hard-pressed working families won't have to spend a dime. Third, the American Families Plan will finally provide up to 12 weeks of paid leave and medical leave, family medical leave. We're one of the few industrial countries in the world. No one should have to choose between a job and a paycheck or taking care of themselves and their loved ones or parent or spouse or child. And fourth, the American Family Plan puts directly into the pockets of millions of Americans. In March, we expanded tax credit for every child in a family, up to $3,000 per child if they're under 6 years of age. Over 6 years of age. And $3,600 for children over 6 years of age. With 2 parents, 2 kids, that's $7,200 in the pockets that are going to help take care of your family. And that will help more than 65 million children and help cut child care poverty in half. And we can afford it. So we did that in the last piece of legislation we passed. But let's extend that child care tax credit at least through the end of 2025. The American Rescue Plan lowered health care premiums for 9 million Americans who buy their coverage under the Affordable Care Act. I know that's really popular this side of the aisle. But let's make that provision permanent so their premiums don't go back up. In addition to my family's plan, I'm going to work with Congress to address this year other critical priorities for American families. The Affordable Care Act has been a lifeline for millions of Americans, protecting people with pre-existing conditions, protecting women's health, And the pandemic has demonstrated how badly it's needed. Let's lower deductibles for working families on the Affordable Care Act. And let's lower prescription drug costs. We know how to do this. The last president had that as an objective. We all know how outrageously expensive drugs are in America. In fact, we pay the highest prescription drug prices of anywhere in the world, right here in America. Nearly 3 times for the same drug, nearly 3 times what other countries pay. We have to change that, and we can. Let's do what we talked about for all the years I was down here in this body.
Not doing a damn thing.
Let's give Medicare the power to save hundreds of billions of dollars by negotiating lower drug prescription prices.
I kind of remember someone before you doing just that.
By the way,
canceling it.
It won't just help people on Medicare. Lower prescription drug costs for everyone. And the money we save, which is billions of dollars, can go to strengthen the Affordable Care Act and expand Medicare coverage benefits without costing taxpayers an additional penny. It's within our power to do it. Let's do it now.
Unbelievable. I know I stopped using that word, but what the heck?
We've talked about it long enough. Democrats and Republicans, let's get it done this year. This is all about a simple premise. Health care should be a right, not a privilege in America. So, how do we pay for my jobs and family plan? I made it clear we can do it without increasing the deficits. Let's start with what I will not do. I will not impose any tax increase on people making less than $400,000. But it's time for corporate America and the wealthiest 1% of Americans to just begin to pay their fair share. Just their fair share.
Fair share. Is that why you started millions of dollars in taxes through your S scores?
Sometimes
fair share?
I have arguments with my friends in the Democratic Party. I think you should be able to become a billionaire and a millionaire, but pay your fair share. A recent study shows that 55 of the nation's biggest corporations paid 0 federal tax last year. Those 55 corporations made in excess of $40 billion in profit. A lot of companies also evade taxes through tax havens in Switzerland and Bermuda and the Cayman Islands. And they benefit from tax loopholes and deductions for offshoring jobs and shifting profits overseas. It's not right. We're going to reform corporate taxes so they pay their fair share and help pay for the public investments their businesses will benefit from as well. We're going to reward work, not just wealth. We take the top tax bracket for the wealthiest 1% of Americans, those making over $400,000 or more, back up to where it was when George W. Bush was president, when he started, 39.6%. That's where it was when George W. was president. We're going to get rid of the loopholes, allow Americans to make more than $1 million a year and pay a lower tax rate on their capital gains than Americans who receive a paycheck. We're only going to affect 0.3% of all Americans by that action, 0.3%. And the IRS is going to crack down on millionaires and billionaires who cheat on their taxes. It's estimated to be billions of dollars by think tanks that are left, right, and center. I'm not looking to punish anybody. But I will not add a tax burden, additional tax burden to the middle class in this country. They're already paying enough. I believe what I propose is fair, fiscally responsible, and it raises revenue to pay for the plans I propose and will create millions of jobs that will grow the economy and enhance our financial standing in the country. When you hear someone say they don't want to raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% or corporate America, ask them, whose taxes you want to raise? Instead, whose are you going to cut? Look, the big tax cut of 2017.
Don't you dare.
Remember, it was supposed to pay for itself. That was how it was sold. And generate vast economic growth.
It did.
Instead, it added $2 trillion to the deficit.
No, we added it.
It was a huge windfall for corporate America.
Oh, God.
And those at the very top. Instead of using the tax saving to raise wages and invest in research and development, it poured billions of dollars into the pockets of CEOs. In fact, the pay gap between CEOs and their workers is now among the largest in history. According to one study, CEOs make 320 times what the average worker in their corporation makes. It used to be below 100. The pandemic has only made things worse. 20 million Americans lost their job in the pandemic, working and middle-class Americans. At the same time, roughly 650 billionaires in America saw their net worth increase by more than $1 trillion in the same exact period. Let me say it again. 650 people increased their wealth by more than $1 trillion during this pandemic. And they're now worth more than $4 trillion. My fellow Americans, trickle down economics has never worked.
That was a
It's time
lie.
to grow the economy from the bottom and the middle out.
Trickle down was a lie. It was not a thing. That was made up. That was made up.
You know, there's a broad consensus of economists left, right, and center, and they agree what I'm proposing will help create millions of jobs and generate historic economic growth. These are among the highest values investments we can make as a nation. I've often said our greatest strength is the power of our example, not just the example of our power. In my conversations with world leaders, and I've spoken to over 38, 40 of them now, I've made it known that America's back. And you know what they say? The comment I hear most of all from them? So they say, we see America's back, but for how long? But for how long? My fellow Americans, we have to show not just that we're back, but that we're back to stay, and that we aren't going to go it alone. We're going to do it by leading with our allies. No one nation can deal with all the crises of our time, from terrorism to nuclear proliferation, mass migration, cybersecurity, climate change, as well as what we're experiencing now, the pandemics. There's no wall high enough to keep any virus out. And our own vaccine supply, as it grows to meet our needs, and we're meeting them, will become an arsenal for vaccines for other countries, just as America is an arsenal for democracy for the world, and in consequence influence the world. But every American will have access before that occurs. Every American will have access to be fully covered by COVID-19 from the vaccines we have. Look, the climate crisis is not our fight alone, it's a global fight. The United States accounts, as all of you know, less than 15% of carbon emissions. The rest of the world accounts for 85%. That's why I kept my commitment to rejoin the Paris Accord, because if we do everything perfectly, it's not going to only matter. I kept my commitment to convene a climate summit right here in America with all the major economies of the world: China, Russia, India, European Union. And I said I'd do it in my first 100 days. I want to be very blunt about it. My attempt was to make sure that the world could see there was a consensus that we are at an inflection point in history. The consensus is if we act to save the planet, we can create millions of jobs and economic growth and opportunity to raise the standard of living amongst everyone around the world. If you watched any of it and you were all busy, I'm sure you didn't have much time. That's what virtually every nation said, even the ones that aren't doing their fair share. The investments I propose tonight also advance the foreign policy, in my view, that benefits the middle class. That means making sure every nation plays by the same rules in the global economy, including China. In my discussion with President Xi, I told him, we welcome the competition. We're not looking for conflict. But I made absolutely clear that we will defend America's interest across the board. America will stand up to unfair trade practices that undercut American workers and American industries, like subsidies from state to state-owned operations and enterprises, and the theft of American technology and intellectual property. I also told President Xi that we'll maintain a strong military presence in the Indo-Pacific, just as we do with NATO and Europe, not to start a conflict, but to prevent one.
A few things he said tonight that I would actually be proud of hearing anyone say.
I told them what I've said to many world leaders, that America will not back away from our commitments, our commitment to human rights and fundamental freedoms, and to our alliances. And I pointed out to him, no responsible American president could remain silent when basic human rights are being so blatantly violated. An American president has to represent the essence of what our country stands for. America is an idea, the most unique idea in history. We are created, all of us, equal.
America is an idea?
It's who we are. And we cannot walk away from that principle and, in fact, say we're dealing with the American idea. With regard to Russia, I know it concerns some of you, but I made very clear to Putin that we're not going to seek escalation, but their actions will have consequences if they turn out to be true, and they turned out to be true. So I responded directly and proportionately to Russia's interference in our elections and the cyber attacks on our government and our business. They did both of these things, and I told them we would respond, and we have. But we can also cooperate when it's our mutual interest. We did it when we extended the New START Treaty on nuclear arms, and we're working to do it on climate change. But he understands we will respond. On Iran and North Korea, nuclear programs that present serious threats to American security and the security of the world. We're going to be working closely with our allies to address the threats posed by both of these countries through diplomacy as well as stern deterrence. And American leadership means ending the forever war in Afghanistan. We have without hyperbole, the greatest fighting force in the history of the world. I'm the first president in 40 years who knows what it means to have a son serving in a war zone. Today, we have service members serving in the same war zone as their parents did. We have service members in Afghanistan who are not yet born on 9/11. The war in Afghanistan, as we remember the debates here, were never meant to be multi-generational undertakings of nation building. We went to Afghanistan to get the terrorists who attacked us on 9/11. And we said we would follow Osama bin Laden to the gates of hell to do it. If you've been in the upper Konar Valley, you've kind of seen the gates of hell. And we delivered justice to bin Laden. We degraded the terrorist threat of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. And after 20 years of valor, and sacrifice, it's time to bring those troops home.
20 years of value?
Look, Even as we do, we'll maintain over-the-horizon capacity to suppress future threats to the homeland. And make no mistake, in 20 years, terrorism has metastasized. The threat has evolved way beyond Afghanistan. Those of you in the intelligence committees, the foreign relations committee, defense committees, you know well, we have to remain vigilant against the threats to the United States wherever they come from. Al-Qaeda and ISIS are in Yemen, Syria, Somalia, other places in Africa, in the Middle East, and beyond. And we won't ignore what our intelligence agencies have determined to be the most lethal terrorist threat to the homeland today. White supremacy is terrorism. We're not going to ignore that either. My fellow Americans, look, we have to come together to heal the soul of this nation.
Here we go.
Nearly a year ago, before her father's funeral, when I spoke with Gianna Floyd, George Floyd's young daughter. She's a little tyke, so I was kneeling down to talk to her so I could look her in the eye. She looked at me, she said, "My daddy changed the world." Well,
no, he did.
After the conviction of George Floyd's murderer, we can see how right she was if we have the courage to act as a Congress.
Define act.
We've all seen the knee of injustice on the neck of Black Americans.
Here we go, George Floyd Act.
Now's an opportunity to make some real progress. The vast majority of men and women wearing a uniform and a badge serve our communities, and they serve them honorably. I know them. I know they want...
Why do you keep calling them all racist? Can you explain that to me?
I know they want to help meet this moment as well. My fellow Americans, we have to come together to rebuild trust between law enforcement and the people they serve, to root out systemic racism in our criminal justice system, and to enact police reform in George Floyd's name that passed the House already. I know Republicans have their own ideas and are engaged in a very productive discussions with Democrats in the Senate.
That they won't listen to.
We need to work together to find a consensus. But let's get it done next month, by the first anniversary of George Floyd's death.
What about Tim Scott's bill, Joe? One that the Democrats filibustered? One that would have reformed
the country
immunity?
supports this reform, and Congress should act. We have a giant opportunity to bend the arc of the moral universe toward justice, real justice. And with the plans outlined tonight, we have a real chance to root out systemic racism that plagues America and American lives in other ways. A chance to deliver real equity, good jobs, good schools, affordable housing, clean air, clean water, being able to generate wealth and pass it down through generations because you have access to purchase a house. Real opportunities in the lives of more Americans, Black, white, Latino, Asian Americans, Native Americans. Look, I also want to thank the United States Senate for voting 94-1 to pass the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act to protect Asian American and Pacific Islanders.
I'm going to have something about that. I just want to interrupt. I'm going to have something about that. Don't let me forget it. We'll get to it at the end.
Decisively. You can see on television the viciousness of the hate crimes we've seen over the past year and for too long. I urge the House to do the same and send that legislation to my desk, which I will gladly, anxiously sign. I also hope Congress will get to my desk the Equality Act to protect LGBTQ Americans. For all transgender Americans watching at home, especially young people, you're so brave. I want you to know your president has your back. Another thing, let's authorize the Violence Against Women Act, which has been law for 27 years. "27 years ago, I wrote it. It'll close the act that has to be authorized now, will close the boyfriend loophole. to keep guns out of the hands of abusers. The court order said this is an abuser. You can't own a gun.
It already is that way.
It's to close that loophole that existed. You know, it's estimated that 50 women are shot and killed by an intimate partner every month in America. 50 a month.
How many women shoot men?
Let's pass it and save some lives.
And how many of those shootings were justified? I mean, honestly, how many?
And I need not tell anyone this, but gun violence has become an epidemic in America.
No, it hasn't.
The flag at the White House was still flying at half-mast for the 8 victims of the mass shooting in Georgia, when 10 more lives were taken in a mass shooting in Colorado. And in the week in between those two events, 250 other Americans were shot dead in the streets of America. 250 shot dead. I know how hard it is to make progress on this issue. In the 90s, we passed universal background checks, a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines that hold 100 rounds that can be fired off in seconds. We beat the NRA. Mass shootings and gun violence declined. Check out the report over 10 years. But in the early 2000s, the law expired. We've seen daily bloodshed since. I'm not saying if the law continued, we wouldn't see bloodshed. More than 2 weeks ago in the Rose Garden, surrounded by some of the bravest people I know, the survivors and families who lost loved ones to gun violence, I laid out several of the Department of Justice actions that are being taken to impact on this epidemic. One of them is banning so-called ghost guns. These are homemade guns built from a kit that includes directions how to finish the firearm. The parts have no serial numbers, so they show up at crime scenes and they can't be traced. The buyers of these ghost gun kits aren't required to pass any background check. Anyone, from a criminal or terrorist, could buy this kit and within 30 minutes have a weapon that's lethal, but no more. And I'll do everything in my power to protect the American people from this epidemic of gun violence, but it's time for Congress to act as well. Look, I don't want to become confrontational, but we need more Senate Republicans to join the overwhelming majority of Democratic colleagues and close the loopholes required in background check purchases of guns.
There are no
We
loopholes.
need a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines.
No, we don't.
And don't tell me it can't be done. We did it before and it worked. Talk to most responsible gun owners and hunters. They'll tell you there's no possible justification for having 100 rounds in a weapon.
F you.
What do you think, deer wearing Kevlar vests? They'll tell you that there are too many people today who are able to buy a gun, but shouldn't be able to buy a gun.
No, they wouldn't say that either.
Reasonable reforms have overwhelming support from the American people, including many gun owners.
That's not true
The
either.
country supports reform, and Congress should act. This shouldn't be a red or blue issue. And no amendment to the Constitution is absolute. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
That's
From the
not
very beginning,
true.
there were certain guns, weapons, that could not be owned by Americans.
That's not true.
Certain people could not own those weapons ever.
That's not true.
We're not changing the Constitution. We're being reasonable. I think this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. I think it's an American issue. And here's what else we can do. Immigration has always been essential to America. Let's end our exhausting war over immigration. For more than 30 years, politicians have talked about immigration reform, and we've done nothing about it. It's time to fix it. On day one of my presidency, I kept my commitment and sent a comprehensive immigration bill to the United States Congress. If you believe we need to secure the border, pass it because it has a lot of money for high-tech border security. If you believe in a pathway to citizenship, pass it. There's over 11 million undocumented folks, the vast majority of here overstaying visas. Pass it. We can actually, if you actually want to solve a problem, I've sent a bill to take a close look at it. We also have to get at the root problem of why people are fleeing, particularly to our southern border from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. The violence, the corruption, the gangs, the political instability, hunger, hurricanes, earthquakes, natural disasters. When I was president, when I was vice president, the president asked me to focus on providing help needed to address the root causes of migration.
When I was president.
And it helped keep people in their own countries instead of being forced to leave. The plan was working, but the last administration decided it was not worth it. I'm restoring the program and asked Vice President Harris to lead our diplomatic effort to take care of this.
You absolute
I
liar.
have absolute confidence she'll get the job done. Now look, if you don't like my plan, let's at least pass what we all agree on. Congress needs to pass legislation this year to finally secure protection for dreamers. The young people have only known America as their home. And permanent protection for immigrants who are here on temporary protective status who came from countries beset by man-made and natural-made violence and disaster.
Man-made and violent-made natural
The farm
disasters.
workers who put food on our tables. Look, immigrants have done so much for America during this pandemic and throughout our history. The country supports immigration reform. We should act. Let's argue over it. Let's debate it. But let's act. And if we truly want to restore the soul of America, we need to protect the sacred right to vote. Most people more people voted in the last presidential election than any time in American history, in the middle of the worst pandemic ever. It should be celebrated. Instead, it's being attacked. Congress should pass H.R. 1 and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and send it to my desk right away.
Yeah, you're right. The damn line.
The country supports it. And Congress should act now.
Stop screaming, Joe. You've got a microphone.
Look, in conclusion, as we gather here tonight, the image of a violent mob assaulting this Capitol, desecrating our democracy, remain vivid in all our minds.
Because you won't shut up
Lives were put
about
at
it.
risk, many of your lives. Lives were lost. Extraordinary courage was summoned. The insurrection was an existential crisis, a test of whether our democracy could survive, and it did.
An unarmed
But the struggle
insurrection.
is far from over. The question of whether our democracy will long endure is both ancient and urgent. As old as our republic.
We're not a democracy.
Still vital today. Can our democracy deliver on its promise that all of us, created equal in the image of God, had a chance to lead lives of dignity, respect, and possibility?
If he
Can our
says Jim Crow
democracy
2.0,
deliver the most pressing needs of our people? Can our democracy overcome the lies, anger, hate, and fears that have pulled us apart?
you're
America's
promoting?
adversaries, the autocrats of the world, are betting we can't. And I promise you they're betting we can't. They believe we're too full of anger and division and rage. They look at the images of the mob that assaulted the Capitol as proof that the sun is setting on American democracy. But they're wrong. You know it, I know it. But we have to prove them wrong. We have to prove democracy still works, that our government still works, and we can deliver for our people. In our first 100 days together, we've acted to restore people's faith in democracy to deliver. We're vaccinating the nation. We're creating hundreds of thousands of new jobs. We're delivering real results to people. They can see it, feel it in their own lives. Opening doors of opportunity, guaranteeing some more fairness and justice. That's the essence of America. That's democracy in action. Our Constitution opens with the words, as trite as it sounds, we the people. Well, it's time to remember that we the people are the government, you and I. not some force in a distant capital, not some powerful force that we have no control over. It's us. It's we, the people.
Why are you yelling?
In another era, when our democracy was tested, Franklin Roosevelt reminded us, in America, we do our part. We all do our part. That's all I'm asking. That we do our part, all of us. And if we do that, we will meet the center challenge of the age by proving that democracy is durable and strong. Autocrats will not win the future. We will. America will. And the future belongs to America. As I stand here tonight before you in a new and vital hour of life and democracy of our nation, and I can say with absolute confidence, I have never been more confident or optimistic about America. Not because I'm president, because what's happening with the American people.
You mean all the systemic racism?
We've stared into the abyss of insurrection and autocracy, pandemic and pain.
Autocracy?
We, the people, did not flinch. At the very moment our adversaries were certain we'd pull apart and fail, we came together, we united. With light and hope, we summoned a new strength, new resolve to position us to win the competition of the 21st century. On our way to a union more perfect, more prosperous, and more just, as one people, one nation, and one America. Folks, as I told every world leader I've ever met with over the years, it's never, ever, ever been a good bet to bet against America, and it still isn't. We're the United States of America. There's not a single thing, nothing beyond our capacity. We can do whatever we set our minds to if we do it together. So let's begin to get together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you for your patience.
I'll stop screaming now. Forty-six asterisk, everyone. Feel the unity yet? Feel the unity yet? By declaring the previous administration an autocracy? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. All right, so let me kill this and let me get into our rebuttal of all this. First of all, hello YouTube. I am so sorry I was ignoring you at the beginning. I was heads down doing all the note taking and I wasn't able to interact with you at all. I barely reacted with the chat, so please don't think I was ignoring you. Green Badger Outdoors says in the YouTube chat, yeah, potatus, potus, poetus, etc., etc. So let's and thank you, David, so much. It's very kind of you. All right. So before I do anything, let's get the DLive treasure chest out of the way. You guys earned it for being here through this whole disaster. So get your clicking ready. YouTube, stand by just a second while I hand out some treats to the DLive crew. The lemons shall start flowing momentarily. So here we go. I'll do that right now. And the words are counting down. So while that's happening, let me go ahead and let me get to the last part first, and then we'll start at the beginning. But I do have a lot of notes here. I mean, a lot of notes. Let's see, 10 seconds on the treasure chest, y'all. Click away, click away. So basically at the end here, on his big wrap up, he was hitting on the real quickly the DLive treasure chest winners as follows: David Von Kettering out in front with Michael North, and the newest member of the family, Dirty Air, taking third. Congratulations, Dirty Air. Nicely done. Nicely done. Well played, all of you. All right, so that's out of the way. Let me get back then to what we were talking about. Yeah, do our part. was the thing that he was hitting on often and off again. They were saying that was what FDR said, and it's true, FDR did say that, but he was talking about getting together to fight World War II. World War II. I don't really see this country involved in anything right now approaching World War II. I do see a civil war coming because of the way the DOJ has weaponized its ability to go after Trump supporters, both for the January 6th riot and for what happened today, raiding Rudy Giuliani's apartment and his office. And they're also seeking to investigate communications between Rudy Giuliani and the great journalist reporter. John Solomon's far from a journalist. He's a reporter. The great reporter John Solomon. By the way, if you don't go there, please start going to justthenews.com. Justthenews.com, all one word, with a period, of course. That is a great site. Excellent reporting. My news radio uses it all the time. We are subscribers to Just the News, as well as a number of other electronic media outlets. Please keep them in mind. Keep them in mind. So yeah, do our part. World War II, Joe. World War II. Also, I loved how he referred to the previous administration as an autocracy. Yes, folks, the Trump administration that never did anything unconstitutional. It was challenged in the courts every time it tried to produce something to help the country, and if it was determined that it was not lawful, the Trump administration fixed it, went back to the drawing board, and got it done. And if I remember correctly, there were maybe one instance, of a Trump policy or other thing passed through the administration that did not survive legal challenge and reworking. Maybe one. Everything else went through. Even the border wall ultimately got funding from Congress, after we were told over and over again that not $1 would be spent on the border wall. But yeah, there's unity in these here parts. As I said yesterday, it looks like this current administration is well on its way to becoming the most taken to court of any administration, including 45. We just hit 100 days, and they are in federal court all over the place. I think Texas alone has 4 lawsuits against this administration right now, including one that just dropped today from the agricultural commissioner suing over the huge giveaway to black farmers in the last boondoggle that was passed without any Republican support, by the way. He lied about that. 46 asterisk lied about that, but gave away those tens and hundreds of billions of dollars to black farmers and completely cut out white farmers who are in the same financial straits, supposedly to make up for racism from the agriculture department. There may have been, I don't know, I'm not going to address that, but it was completely a racially motivated giveaway, and the Texas agriculture department said, hey, that's against the Civil Rights Act. You can't do that. Period. So that's in court. But yeah, so do you guys feel the unity? He said insurrection, I think at least 5 times, if not over. But not one word about any of the Antifa or BLM riots happened since May of last year and are still going on in parts of the country. Elizabeth, North Carolina right now is, Elizabeth City, North Carolina is fixing to go up in flames over what looks to be a complicated but possibly justified shooting. Last reports from law enforcement say that the offender who was shot in Elizabeth City was hitting officers with his car on at least 2 occasions before they opened fire. That is assault with a deadly weapon. That does give you the right to shoot. Not saying that's what happened. Those are the reports out of law enforcement. They are saying that what the family has been saying so far from the footage they've seen of the shooting has been, I believe, a painful lie, as they put it, or a painful falsehood. One of those two. But that is the rhetoric coming out of Elizabeth City right now. So And it's going to be perhaps another 30 days at least before everybody sees the body cam footage. A judge has ruled that it's going to take at least 30 days for the state investigation to get underway, at least far enough for a release of the information to not be deemed prejudicial. But some of the footage has been shown to family members already, and as I understand it, all of it is going to be shown to select members of the family and one attorney real soon, if not already. So there was that. Let's see. Of course, H.R. 1. Yeah, right. That would completely federalize elections. That would completely federalize every election in this country, and it would destroy this quote-unquote democracy they're talking about. It would take away voter ID. It would take away any chance to clean up voter rolls. It would make cleaning up voter rolls illegal, as it would to ask for voter ID. It would make it illegal to challenge someone at a voting place, to think that maybe because they don't speak any English and they're wearing their pants on backwards, maybe they're not a legitimate voter. But you can't ask, otherwise you'll go to jail. They would even take away the ability of federal judges to decide election laws. They would make all federal judges subjected to a governmental board, a review board, which basically means if you don't rule the way we like, we're going to take your position away. And that would be a board of bureaucrats, not of elected officials. And those are just 3 or 4 of the lowlights of H.R. 1. I could go on and on and on about how much of a disaster that would be for any type of fair representation in elections in this country. It has 0 chance of getting through the Senate, but that doesn't mean we can't stop hitting on these incredible power grabs that the Democrats are trying to pull. All right, so let's get to it then. Notes. Sorry, just a second. I'm flipping with fat fingers. Oh, I skipped a page. That's what's throwing me off. All right, here we go. All right, so let's start from the beginning. First off, everyone, as we noted in the chats, were wearing a mask. Every one of the people in that room has been fully vaccinated. And we were told by the CDC not 24 hours ago that if you're fully vaccinated, you can be in a room with other fully vaccinated people and not have to wear a mask. We were told that. Yet the entire room, first of all, there was social distancing, and everyone wore a mask. Even Mr. Follow the Science and Get a Vaccine wore a mask until he started to talk. So why get the vaccine if you have to wear a mask still? I'm seriously considering telling my doctors that I'm not coming to any more appointments after I'm fully vaccinated, which will be mid-May, mid to late May. Late May. Yeah, I'll be fully vaccinated late May. I'm going to tell them, if you're going to make me wear a mask, I'm not coming in. We'll do Zoom calls until then. I'm not wearing a mask if I'm fully vaccinated, period. End of story. That's my personal preference. You do whatever you like. Do whatever you like. I think the vaccines are great. I trust them. You do what you like. All right. Madam Vice President, I'm the first president to ever say that, and it's about time. Didn't take long for the diversity to kick in. Joe mentioned swearing in on his family Bible. Good for you. I'm glad you have a family Bible. I saw a story today that the United States Council of Catholic Bishops is going to be considering a proposal next month, a rule, that if you're a politician who promotes abortion and other tenets completely against Catholic teaching, Catholic dogma, that they're going to bar you from accepting communion. That's one step away from being excommunicated in the Catholic Church, being barred from taking communion. That communion is a big, big sacrament in the Catholic Church. I know, I've raised Catholic. I've got 12 years of CCD under my belt. But that would be massive. Now, I know the bishop for San Diego, Archbishop for San Diego, he's against that. He thinks it should be left up to the individual bishops at the different parishes or around over the different parishes. But there's a pretty strong consensus in the council at present that that should be a thing. Now, there has been one very brave priest who has refused Biden communion because of Biden's views on abortion. And others have talked about it. But we'll have to see if that happens. But that would include Biden, Pelosi, a few others that I can't think of off the top of my hypoxic head. But it is a thing. It is a thing. And that may be something coming down the pipe. So keep that in mind, Mr. Devout Catholic. Okay, so of course, right off the bat, also was mentioned the riot, the worst attack on our country since the Civil War. Yeah, Pearl Harbor didn't count. 9/11 didn't count. People were. Did they say people were killed? Did they say people died or people were killed? I missed that in my notes, but I do know that the only person who died of homicide was Ashley Babbitt, the protester who was shot through a door. Yeah, if you want to call that an insurrection, fine, you're a liar. Talking about the country coming back, the economy coming back. We're still locked down by almost half, Joe. Democrats are still locking down states. California says it's not going to unlock for another, month? New York still hasn't unlocked New York City in any appreciable way. Businesses are fleeing left and right. Citizens are fleeing left and right. New York's lost so many population that they've lost a congressional seat. California is going to be losing a congressional seat, even though California has seen nothing but massive influxes in illegal immigrants over the past how many years. They're losing a seat. Texas is possibly gaining 2 seats. Florida's gaining 1. I believe Montana and some other northwestern states are gaining. So there's that. Exactly, Michael North, exactly. On both of those counts. So, yeah. Let's see. Oh, yeah, the American Rescue Plan. He specifically said that had support from Democrats, liberals, and Republicans. That's a complete lie. Pretty much, root beer, by the way. Sprecker's root beer, not beer. I don't drink when I'm doing live streams anymore. That was last year. That's not going to happen again. But, and not one Republican voted for the American Rescue Plan, you liar. Not one. In fact, hardly a majority of Republicans believe it was a good idea. And those who do don't know what's in it. Which is unfortunately way too many. 100 million vaccinations in 100 days. 100 million shots in 100 days. Yeah, that was going to happen in April no matter what. You would have had to have shut down vaccine production in order for that not to happen. The Trump administration had the vaccines ready, they had the distribution ready, and they had people wanting to get the vaccine. No thanks to you and Harris, who said on national TV several times, including other high-profile Democrats, that you would not get a vaccine created by the Trump administration. That you would have to wait for independent verification of its efficacy and safety. This guy right here, Cuomo, same thing. New York's not going to use the Trump vaccine. We're gonna wait. We're gonna do our own independent study. And Trump said, okay, then we won't send it to you. You don't want it? Then we won't send it to you. And New York starts screaming for it, and they screw up the rollout so badly that hospitals are throwing away vials by the dozens because people aren't showing up after they've thawed them out. But so congratulations, Joe, on getting the over 200 million shots in 100 days, which again was pretty much going to happen no matter what you did. Certainly don't give the Trump administration any credit for the vaccine or for the distribution plan that they had set up months in advance of the vaccines even being approved for use. Not one word to the previous administration about that. Not one. And of course, vaccines have slowed down because of your guys' mask religion. People are asking themselves, why should I get a vaccine when you're still going to make me wear a mask everywhere? Unless I'm around other vaccinated people, which means I have to ask them, do you have your vaccine? Because if you don't, I can't take off my mask, which means you're violating a person's privacy. But who are we to judge? So why get vaccinated? Why get vaccinated? Biden bragged about the $1,400 checks, not all of which are out yet. You promised 2,000, Joe. You promised over and over again 2,000, and then you told your lapdog Psaki to say, well, you got 600 under Trump, so this 1,400 equals 2,000. Not what you said, not what you promised. Biden mentioned the keeping people from getting evicted. Well, I guess he didn't see last month where the federal court ruled that the CDC eviction freeze was unconstitutional and could no longer be applied because it was violating businesses' rights to, I should say, rental companies, landlords, violating their rights to property by taking away their ability to get rent and put people who can pay the rent in those spots. So then he talked about infrastructure, the American Jobs Plan, he calls it. Of course, there's so much in there that isn't infrastructure. Jobs are not infrastructure. That is something entirely different. Let's see, they're going to replace lead pipes. Okay, great, that's good. Why do we need federal money to do that? Shouldn't the communities who have the lead pipes be raising the money to fix their own water supply? Isn't that what property taxes are for? To pay for things like the water? So why do we need federal money for that? I paused for a second, by the way, because I wrote down the periodic table of elements abbreviation for lead, which is PB versus lead. And it took me a second because my P is so poorly drawn, it looks like a D. But I finally remembered what I had done there. High-speed internet. Okay, great. That's a great idea. I like the idea of everybody having high-speed internet. Rural areas, it's going to cost a lot to put it out there, but perhaps we can do it. What I'd like to know is, though, can those rural areas afford high-speed internet? That question hasn't been asked. Just because you have it doesn't mean you've got the money to pay for it month after month. Or are we going to subsidize everybody's internet bills too? There's an old line in the warbird community. Just because you can afford to buy it doesn't mean you can afford to fly it. Warbirds suck up a lot of aviation fuel. A lot. I know a guy who bought a SPAD, as it used to be called. It was the A1 Skyraider. It was the primary ground attack aircraft in Vietnam. It was propeller driven. It was the last propeller driven attack plane from the Navy. And it was a beast. I shot down a MiG-15 in one on an online dogfighting ladder I used to run. Yes. I actually did shoot down a MiG-15 with a prop-driven aircraft. That's another story. But he bought the SPAD, and then he started flying it. The first hour in a SPAD uses 100 gallons of gas, avgas, which is 100 low lead octane. It's expensive stuff. And he sold that aircraft the next season because he couldn't afford to fly it to the air shows like he wanted to. Poor guy. So, just because you can have it doesn't mean you can afford it. Let's see. Getting another job. Oh, yeah, the vice president. My V looks like a U. The vice president is going to be in charge of part of the infrastructure plan. So another job she can't do. That'll be great. Looking forward to that. Joe mentioned the power grid. That he wants to keep it from being vulnerable to China and Russia. Here's the thing, Joe. You're letting them come into the power grid. Because one of the first things you did was completely throw away the Trump rule that China and Russia could not have anything to do with the grid. And one of the very first things you did was throw that away and give them access to the grid. And now you're saying we need to protect it from them. If you can add up all of the things this administration has done to spite Trump that have made things worse, well, you basically have this list right here. Next. Extend child care. Extending child care isn't infrastructure. That's not infrastructure. Calling it infrastructure doesn't make it infrastructure. Infrastructure is stuff that everybody shares. Physical things everybody shares. Not everybody shares child care. So, and we shouldn't have to. Medicare. We're going to start making Medicare able to pay for in-home care for the disabled and the elderly. Fine. I'm going to be elderly one day. I would love to have Medicare pay for someone to come in and take care of me if my wife is no longer able to help. That's fine. Where's that money going to come from? Medicare is going to be broke within another, 10, 14 years with the current level of spending. Fewer people are putting enough money into the system to pay for Medicare than before. It's running out of cash. Yet we're going to spend even more. Again, I like the idea, but you can't just pretend money's going to come out of nowhere. And we'll get to his taxation at the end there. I've got a big thing on that. Let's see. Climate crisis. Yeah, climate crisis. No one cares about the climate, Joe. I saw a survey last year, right in the heart of the election. Climate, quote-unquote, crisis was about 15th on the list of Americans' priorities. Only you, John Kerry, the rest of the Democrats, and the media care about climate at all. Most Americans, by far, if they think about it, don't give a damn. Oh yeah, unions. Now he mentioned union jobs. EW, I believe, an International Association of Electrical Workers. Now he's for union jobs. He kills 11,000 union jobs when he cancels the Keystone XL pipeline permit. But now he's for union jobs. Gotcha, Joe. Thanks. Oh yeah. So of course more subsidies for green energy, more farm subsidies. We're going to pay farms to plant cover crops, whatever those are called, to absorb CO2. Well, you know what, Joe? Every crop absorbs CO2. All of them. It's called photosynthesis. A plant grows by taking in CO2, transforming it into energy with sunlight, via sunlight, I should say, and chlorophyll, and they produce oxygen. All plants are carbon sinks. So what is this paying farmers to plant cover crops? It's more farm subsidies. I thought the left hated farm subsidies. Solar panels. Yeah, solar panels and wind turbines. Where are all those going to be built? They're currently being built overseas, mainly in China. Joe said that why can't wind turbine blades be built in Pittsburgh? I'm sure they can be. I'm sure that's a great idea. Although Pittsburgh really isn't a heavy industry town anymore, Joe. It's gone completely executive. It's mainly healthcare now. Pittsburgh is a healthcare hub. You're not going to build another factory in Pittsburgh, you idiot. It's not what it does anymore. Pittsburgh's one of the most transformed cities in the country, and I'm sure it wants to stay that way. But far be it from us to expect the president to know anything about anything. Pittsburgh. I laughed. I almost laughed out loud when I heard that one. But even if we did put that factory in Pittsburgh, how long is it going to take before it starts producing blades? You're talking about taking us off fossil fuels right now, without increasing our nuclear supply. In fact, probably cutting all nuclear if you had your way. Even though that's the greenest energy out there. But we're supposed to wait till we buy any more solar panels and wind turbine blades until they start cranking them out in Pittsburgh. I don't think we're going to be waiting as long as that's going to take. Just saying. Just saying. Let's see. No hard numbers on this plan doing anything. He said that independent economists have predicted millions of extra jobs and millions of extra dollars in income and yada, yada, yada. No, they haven't. They haven't seen any real numbers yet. No one knows exactly how much this is going to cost. You just played out a bunch of numbers today. Before it was all maybe $2.5 trillion, but it's going to cost us more like $6 trillion over the next 10 years with all the added benefits we're going to add on that we previously said were just going to be temporary, like child care, for instance, other things. So no, there are not a lot of economists out there saying this is going to be great. That was a lie. Now, real quickly, the stock market from today. I want you to look at something. First of all, earlier today, the Fed held its two-day meeting, the end of its two-day meeting of the Federal Open Market Committee, and it says here, this is an article from the Epoch Times by Emil Khan, that the FOMC announced it would hold federal fund rate at a rate of 0 to 0.25%. So right now that means they're trying to keep the line of inflation by keeping interest rates low. Well, the thing is, prices are growing. Energy's up something like 16%. Gas prices are screaming. It costs you a good 3% extra at the grocery store just on regular stuff. A lot of stuff has gone up even more. So the Fed had saying we're holding the line on inflation. In the market, the Dow actually went down almost 0.5% today. So it finished well below 34,000. It hasn't been above 34,000 since yesterday afternoon. It's been below it ever since. It fell even further today. The S&P 500 was down. The NASDAQ was down. So the market did not respond favorably to the Fed. Even Bitcoin was down a little bit today. Crude oil had a great day. It's up over $64 a barrel for West Texas Intermediate Sweet Crude right now. Crude oil was up almost 0.5% today. So we'll have to see what happens tomorrow morning when the market opens after what we just heard tonight. I'm not predicting good news. There was so much spending laid out and so little talked about how we were going to pay for it other than tax the rich. And I'll get to that. I don't see it being a good opening. I could be wrong. I often am, but I just don't see it being a good opening. All right, let me close these. All right, so there's that. All right, moving right along, page 2. He spoke a lot longer than I'd expected, and a lot of other people too. I didn't expect him to go for more than maybe 40 minutes at the absolute maximum top, and he actually went for well over an hour. I was very surprised. Very surprised. Okay, also in the American Jobs Plan, he talked about allowing workers to unionize. I didn't know that was no longer allowed. I could have sworn there was a law that said, a federal law, that said you had to allow people to unionize if they want to. You have to allow them to hold a fair vote to see if they want to unionize or not. So, of course, with Democrats, a fair union vote means we're going to put our thumbs on the scale and make you vote to join in the union. Dave Von Kettering says in the Deal chat he was juiced up. I'm not too unsurprised about that. There were rumors to that effect. Yeah, it's already legal to unionize. What the Democrats want to do is remove the right-to-work statutes. There are dozens of states that have right-to-work statutes, which means you have to be able to get a job without joining whatever union represents that company. That's right to work. And what the Democrats want to do is cancel that. So that no matter where you are in this country, if there's a union shop there, you have to join the union to work there. Period. And they also want to cancel the Janus decision, which means if you're not part of the union, as it stands right now, you don't have to pay union dues, even if you're working at a union shop, say like a teacher at a public school that has a public school union, teachers union. It used to be that you had to pay union dues even if you weren't in the union. The Janus decision from the Supreme Court a few years ago changed that. And the Democrats have been screaming holy murder ever since. So they want that to go away. Of course, it wouldn't be a Democrat talking about the workplace without mentioning how women don't get paid an equal amount compared to men. That's been illegal since the 70s. There are 3 laws on the books right now, 3 federal laws on the books making it illegal to pay women differently than men. Yet we need another one, it looks like, because Joe Biden can't do math. He has no idea that there is no such thing as a wage gap. There are only differences in earnings based on experience, time in the job, as far as how many hours you work, and time you take off for such things as family leave. I do have something on family leave, by the way, that might surprise you. $15 an hour minimum wage. I'm really surprised that came up because they were dropping that before. And he threw it out there again. I'm sure that's just red meat to the far left. I'm sure he's placating the far left with that. Joe Manchin has said on a couple of occasions he will not vote for $15 an hour minimum wage. He will not let that go through. Joe Manchin has, in fact, gone so far as to put forward his own minimum wage increase plan. So he's not looking to do that. That's not going to go anywhere. But again, I'm sure that was just red meat to the left. Now, there was talk of funding advanced research. That's great. That's great. I think that's a wonderful idea. I heard people mention during the Trump administration that he should have put together basically a new Manhattan Project. You remember the Manhattan Project is what we put together during World War II to create the atom bomb. And it worked, obviously. Now we have the hydrogen bomb, which is 1,000 times more explosive. But we should have put together a Manhattan Project for high tech during the Trump administration. It didn't happen. But now there is that opportunity, and I say great. I hope it gets all the money it needs. Don't short shrift it at all. What I do want to ask for, though, is that we keep China from stealing everything. And this administration has not shown any real aggression towards the Confucius Institutes and the other things that the Chinese are using to infiltrate our research system. Yes, the FBI is still bringing cases against Chinese spies in research positions, like the Southern Illinois University professor who was charged just the other day with wire fraud violations and for failing to disclose foreign money on a grant form. But that's a thing, so we're going to have to watch that. Let's see. Oh, gosh. Did you guys know that Joe Biden's son, Beau, died of cancer? Did you know that? Because I hadn't heard that until the 100th time today. I'm so sorry Beau Biden died of brain cancer. He was young. He was moving up in the world. It was a tragedy. He was, I believe, Attorney General of Maryland when he died. That is a shame. But I am so sick and tired of hearing of it. Enough already. Can't you just say, my family has seen tragedy? Do we have to bring him up by name every damn time? By the way, we can't cure cancer. I'm sorry. We can't cure cancer. Cancer is not a disease. It is a type of disease of which there are hundreds of variants. There are multiple types of cancers. And we can't just cure cancer. It doesn't work that way. There are genetic cancers. There are environmental cancers. There are diet cancers even. You can't cure cancer. Drives me nuts when he says that. We have cured some cancers. Child lymphoma is basically, death from child lymphoma is basically a thing of the past. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in adults is also eminently treatable. There are other cancers that are very treatable now, but you're not going to be able to cure cancer. Ken Lee says in the YouTube chat, hello Ken, that LFTR should be the new Manhattan Project. I'm sorry Ken, please forgive me. I don't know what LFTR stands for. I know that's going to sound insanely stupid. I'm sure I should know it, but if you could possibly spell that out in the YouTube chat, I'd really appreciate it. That would help. It just it went past me, and if it's something that can't be spelled out, then I'll look it up later. And thank you for the humor. But if you can help me, that would be great. Thank you for putting that in there, by the way. Free education. Joe mentioned free education. There's no such thing. Nothing is free. Everything has to be paid for by someone else. I'm not paying for some other idiot's college education so we can get a gender studies degree from Brandeis. Not going to happen. And again, as I kind of alluded to here, even if there is such a thing as free education, education in America these days isn't worth spit. There are a handful of decent universities out there. Hillsdale College, also Liberty. Oh, Ken Lee says liquid fluoride thorium reactors. Oh, yeah. Also known as thorium salt reactors, right? Excellent. Yes, I am completely behind you there. 100% behind you. Those would be an absolute game changer. As I understand it, the technology is sound. We're just looking for certain advances that I'm not quite familiar with. I'm not as up on LFTs as I should be. But that would be LFTRs, pardon me. But that is absolutely, yes. I couldn't agree more. I wish he had mentioned that specifically. It would have really made my night. But thank you for reminding me of that. I appreciate it. So, But yeah, free education. So he brought up expanding Head Start. And I decided to take a look. I knew some things were going to come up tonight. Here, let me delete some of these so I'm not confused. Here we go. Head Start. So I found a few articles on that. First off, here's an article from Forbes back in March of 2012. And it's interesting. The Department of Health and Human Services did a survey and collected data on the efficacy of Head Start, which got started in 1964. And back when this article was written, Head Start cost $7 billion a year. That's an average of $7,600 per child. But the results of the National Head Start Impact Study, as of this writing, had not been released. The HHS released a part of it on first graders, but not the rest of it. So I went further, and I found some more on it. And this is from the Brookings Institute, not exactly known as a far-right outlet. And the Brookings Institute says that Head Start improves educational outcomes, but I've got some graphs here. Let me blow this up for you. All right. Here we have effective early education on high school graduation rates. And you can see here these first six columns, everything to the left of the far right are all Head Start. And you can see the best Head Start says results are about 11% effect of extra high school graduation rates. That's the best, and that's Head Starts for mothers who have an education of less than high school. And that's a cohort treated from 1974 to 1994, so a 20-year cohort. At the bottom, you can see here, barely 3%. And that's a 2007 study from a cohort between 1973 and 1983. Now here's one specific to African Americans. Head Start African American. Maybe 4%. $9-10 billion a year. And you're looking at a 4% increase in high school graduation rates among African Americans. The Hispanic population, in that same calculation, cohort from 1974 to 1994, 10%. Still not very good, but over twice, 3 times, as a matter of fact, that of the African Americans in the program. No idea why. But Perry Preschool is a independent type of Head Start system. Perry Preschool, 20%. 20% for their system. And that's from 2005, a 2005 study. So it doesn't look like even this is from the Brookings piece. This is not a conservative outlet, but they're showing that kind of numbers. So not all that strong of performance there, folks. And then there was also, I'll just reference it briefly, something called the Hetchinger Report. And the Hetchinger Report, this is from 2016. And it says that basically, once you get to 3rd grade, any quote-unquote advances that students show from being in Head Start disappear. They're just, boom, they're gone. They looked specifically at Portland Public Schools in Oregon, And they have a very strong system, small classrooms, daily half-day programs, and they don't see any strong numbers past third grade. In fact, they don't see any decent numbers at all. So, not exactly hitting the high marks. Also, Head Start is serving just 41% of its eligible population in the 2014 to 2015 school year. Early Head Start for children 3 and 4 served 4%. So for 2016 fiscal, for Head Start to serve every eligible child, it would cost close to $20 billion. And that's 2016 numbers. So I'd say Head Start's off the table, folks. Just saying. You can disagree. You can disagree. Ken Lee makes the point in the chat about Montessori's. I never had kids, so I don't know a lot about younger age schooling. I have heard of Montessori's though being a very interesting system, and I'd love to look into it more someday. But I do understand there was that friction at the time. Okay, so next up was community college. That came up. And this is interesting. Community college graduation rates are really, really bad if you go for 2-year associates. I've got a graph here, a little hard for you to read. It says percent of U.S. students enrolled in public 2-year institutions who graduate in 2, 3, and 4 years. Not even 15% graduate with an associate's in 2 years, maybe 22% in 3 years, and around 28%, 28% in 4 years. So at best, it takes people 4 years to get a 2-year associate's, and not even 30% of them do that. Now, this article does make mention, and this is from communitycollegereview.com from last year, just last June. But it does make the point that just because you don't count a student as graduating doesn't mean they went for the full 2-year associates and bailed. A lot of students, including myself, went to community college for a period of time in order to get college credit for prerequisites for your major. I had to skip a year of college for hip surgeries. And while I was out and recuperating, I was able to go to community college in the area and get some of my prerequisites for my degree out of the way. A couple English courses, a math course, things like that. Let me quote Ken Lee in the YouTube chat again. Regarding Montessori, it misses teaching the love of learning. I'm guessing you had to say it makes, or it teaches the love of learning as opposed to teaching. I'm sorry. Head Start misses teaching the love of learning. I got you now. Okay. The it threw me. Forgive me. If there's anyone in the world who can misread a chat, it's me. Just so you know. But I got you now. About teaching the love of learning. Gotcha. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up. That brings me a point about Head Start that I forgot to mention. The Head Start teachers, when they were evaluated, and most Head Start employees are former Head Start students. It's part of the system. They want to incorporate former students into the employment force. It's actually part of the reason behind it was that it would create jobs. But so you're more high on the list to get hired if you are former Head Start. But it said that the Head Start employees are really good at the caring part of the part with the kids. They care for the kids well, but they're not very good at teaching. They fall short of metrics when it comes to teaching well. They're good at being nice, they're good at keeping the kids clean and happy, but they're not good at teaching them. So that right there could point to some of those stats I showed you a second ago. But also with I'm gonna skip the rest of community colleges. We can go on from here. Joe mentions getting funding for HCBUs, HBCUs. I think he said it wrong. I'm gonna guess he said it wrong, but I'm not gonna make a definitive statement on that. But HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. He says we're going to start funding them. Trump already funded them. I remember Trump made a point of mentioning on the campaign trail how the HBCUs would continuously come to the White House under Obama and ask for money every year and then have to come back the next year and ask again. And Trump said, well, why? Well, they won't fund us. And Trump said, okay, fine, you're funded. How much do you need? Well, we need X. Well, here's X plus Y. You're good to go. You're good to go. Yes, David. Tim did do the response to Biden. If I was going to be on tomorrow, I'd cover it. But again, for those of you who normally tune into the news rodeo, I have an appointment with my oral surgeon tomorrow afternoon, so I can't do the news rodeo tomorrow. But we are on for Friday. And in case you're interested, tomorrow morning, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern, I will be doing my beginning of my Witcher 3 Wild Hunt live stream starting at 8 a.m. Eastern on Trovo, DLive, and Twitch. You can find me there. DLive, of course, dlive.tv/AHNC. But just look for, just do a search for either of those three, Trovo, Twitch, or DLive, and then put in that chat, in that search, AHNC, and you'll find me easily. But that's neither here nor there. Let's see. Oh yeah, and Joe was talking about the HBCUs being able to teach STEM. Okay, cool. That's great. They should. They should get the money together, get the faculty together, and teach. I'm all for it. But just last week, we heard about one of the major HBCUs canceling their classical lit department. Just boom, took it away. No more classical literature at that school. Now, I'll admit, my classical literature background is very, very weak. I mean, extremely weak. But I was not an English major. I was a chemistry major, and then I switched to media production because I'm an idiot. That's a whole nother story. But I'll never tell anyone why I did that. It's too embarrassing. But it had nothing to do with grades. But yeah, so they canceled their classical literature department, but we're supposed to expect them to gear up for STEM training. Gotcha. Okay, good. Whatever. Family leave. I found a really, really good article on family leave today. Let me drag it down here. Or I should. I'm probably pull it up here. Here we go. This is from fastcompany.com. Now, my wife has heard of them. She used to be a financial analyst, so she knows a lot about different places, and fastcompany.com was one of them. And I found this article. It's from January of 2016, and it's called The Real Cost of Paid Parental Leave for Business. And it asks, can paying an employee's salary and benefits plus their temporary replacement ever benefit the bottom line? And the answer to that question in this article is yes. Yes. And it makes specific mention of California. Let me read to you briefly here. In California, if a worker takes 6 weeks off at the maximum allowance, that costs the company $6,040 $402. Of course, the state pays that worker, and according to the California Employment Development Department, workers contribute an average of $30 per year into a fund for paid leave. So, according to the state's surveys, 89% of companies reported either positive or no negative effects on productivity, turnover, and morale. In fact, those last two were 93% and 99% for turnover and morale. That's amazing. That's beyond amazing. So it works. It works. They're saying that they don't lose as many people as they did before they offered paid leave. They don't lose the productivity of having the person not there, because otherwise they would have to bring in a new person and train them up, as opposed to a temp who usually has pretty specific job skills and can fit in pretty fairly quickly. And there's also a very little potential decrease in productivity from losing team members temporarily, but much more if you lose them permanently, because then you have to backfill all that experience, which takes a long time. So family leave, according to fastcompany.com and surveys done by the Center for Economic and Policy Research, at least in California, say paid family leave is an absolute boon to businesses. So from this basis, I'm going to say great. Every company should offer it. It seems to be an obvious benefit to the bottom line. My only question is to our president, honk honk, why do we have to pay for it? Why do federal taxpayers have to pay for family leave? Why can't we just leave it up to the businesses in the states? I can't wait to hear an answer on that. The child tax credit, we're going to be increasing that massively, which means, of course, we're going to be paying people to have kids. I understand the population rate in this country has dropped, so perhaps we do need to crank up in order to do that. But you're also incentivizing people not to work. So on the one hand, we're going to make child care more affordable, but cost more, because we're going to pay child care people more money, which means people aren't going to be able to afford it unless they get subsidies. But we're also going to pay extra to have kids and then just not work. So kind of a cross purpose there. He says he's going to cut child care poverty in half. I wrote down LOL. LOL. He had 8 years to cut child care poverty in half, and instead he and his boss put more kids in poverty, increased the poverty numbers in the United States by millions. The last president, Trump, he's the one who decreased poverty in America by millions and brought a lot more kids out of poverty. But who are we to judge? Certainly not I. And of course, we're going to keep subsidizing even more than before the, as I put it, trash ACA, also known as the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. It didn't work the first time. Trump did his best to fix it, and now we're going to throw even more money at it. Great, good for us. And we are almost done. Let's see here. He, of course, took credit for Trump's drug price reductions. Trump was the one who negotiated the deals to get the best price, the lowest, most favored nation price. But somehow Biden made it sound like he did it. Although I do remember Biden canceling Trump's cost decreases on insulin and EpiPens when Biden immediately came into office. It's one of the first things he did was cancel Trump's cutting out the middleman on EpiPen and insulin sales. But we're supposed to applaud him for dropping drug prices somehow. Okay, so Biden starts getting into money, starts getting into how he's going to pay for all this. So he's going to increase taxes on people who make more than $400,000, or if you're in a household that files for more than $400,000. Interesting point that I found today. If you're a small business, did you know that you can file your business income as part of your personal income? So if you don't have, say, an LLC or an S Corp, which are ways of protecting your money, and you're just taking the money you make from your pizza place and saying, okay, well, this is how much it brought in, this is my net, this is my gross, and here it is on my taxes, on my 1080 or 1040. Was it 1040? Yeah. Then that's your income. And if that income is more than 400,000, then Biden's going to tax you on it. So you're going to have to lay off people or close your business if you can't afford the extra taxes. That's not a corporate tax increase. That's just a tax increase on a business. And of course, speaking of paying your fair share, I'm sure you all heard about Biden and Jill's S Corp escapade when they paid themselves a salary out of 2 S Corps that they created for their speaking and book fees, the money they made from speaking and books, and funneled that money into those 2 S Corps, paid themselves a salary out of those S Corps, thereby saving themselves some $1 million+ in taxes they would have had to have paid for Social Security and Obamacare. Yes, they used the S Corps to avoid paying into Social Security and Obamacare. Over $1 million. But we're supposed to worry about other people not paying their fair share. Corporations not paying federal taxes. That's because there's such a thing as a deduction for research and development. And you get to write off old equipment. And when you replace it with new equipment, it's called amortization. These are things that allow businesses to keep putting money into the business. It's called maintaining profitability. If you start taxing them on money that they could put back into the business is going to suffer. And if they're going to keep up that kind of R&D and other infrastructure improvements, then they're going to have to either lay off employees or cut wages, or cut benefits, or all three. This is pure classism. This is absolutely saying, look at that guy over there, he's got more than you, we need to take it from him. We need to take it from him. And of course, the millions of people they employ are paying taxes. They're paying payroll taxes. They're paying Social Security taxes. They're paying into the whatever fund. What am I trying to say? Disability. When you get hurt on a job. Can't think of the name of it now. But, so death and dismemberment, whatever. You're paying into all that. And if you cut their wages, you're not going to get as much money out of them. And if they lose their job or get hours cut, you're still not going to get any more money out of them. You're going to get less. Workman's comp. Thank you, David. Thank you, comp. Thank you. Workman's comp. I appreciate it. Obviously, I've been on workman's comp once. Once. I hurt my back. A couple times I've been off work because of my back before I started having back surgeries, back in the 80s and 90s. So, those people pay taxes, idiot. And of course, he had to say millionaires and billionaires, brought back Bernie's line from the campaign before Bernie became a millionaire, and then stopped saying millionaires and billionaires and just said billionaires. But Joe Biden brought back millionaires and billionaires. You know who's a millionaire right now? Joe Biden. He and Jill are worth lots of money. Lots of money. Did I mention the S-Corps already? I think I did. He's going to create millions of jobs. How? Shovel-ready jobs? We saw how well that worked last time. How many hundreds of shovel-ready jobs were actually created in those boondoggles? I don't even think there were hundreds. But we're supposed to believe that millions of jobs are going to fly out of our monkeys' butts. And, of course, it wouldn't be a Democrat address without lying about the Trump tax cut. He said that it went mainly to the wealthy. That's not true. It went mainly to the low-income earners. If you may be able to do math, you'll know that the low and middle-income earners' wages went up 4 times as much as those in the top 1% of the wage earners. Four times as much. Trump put thousands of extra dollars back into the pockets of middle and lower income Americans. Thousands. More in 1 year than Biden and Obama did in 8. But who are we to judge? Liar, liar, liar. It would not be Joe Biden in front of a microphone without being able to say liar at least 10 times. And there's 5 of them right there. Oh yeah, and the part about the businesses using the money to buy back stock. They're doing that now, Joe, with the market the way it is right now. With you as president, they're doing that now. And I don't see you complaining about that. They're probably not going to be doing that when you raise the corporate tax rate. So then levels are going to go down. But we've got something on that in a little bit. Oh yeah, leading with our allies. I love that one. In other words, leading from behind. Folks, we're going to start leading from behind again. And as I pointed out in the chat, the longest applause of the night, including the finale, went to Dr. Jill, the community college teaching hero, whose dissertation for her doctorate from the esteemed University of Delaware, who has no connection to the Biden family whatsoever, in a doctorate in education, in EE. Yeah, that was the longest applause of the night for the First Lady who teaches community college. Gotcha. That's our hero, folks. No wall high enough to block a virus. Okay. Who was it again that was talking about limiting travel from Florida? Wouldn't that be kind of like putting up a wall between Florida and the rest of the country, Joe? No? Liars. Liars and hypocrites. Of course, not one actual mention of the border to speak of. He did mention at the end something about passing the immigration law so we can get high-tech border solutions. We had high-tech border solutions. They're called the wall. The wall was absolutely wired to the hilt and would be still and be complete now if you hadn't illegally stopped construction. And we heard a few weeks ago that your baby mama, Mayorkas, is considering restarting construction, which again was halted illegally, and we're paying $1 million a month in fees for these contractors sitting on their butts with equipment and materials just lying there. Open sections in the wall where the roads have been built, the ground has been graded. All you have to do is walk up, walk over, and boom, you're on a road, you're in the United States. In fact, I saw an excellent piece from the Daily Wire today. They now have their own reporting arm that does on-the-ground reporting as well as just, regular news. And they sent a camera crew to the border. I believe her name is Missy Clark. And Missy did an excellent job on the border, about a 7-minute video. And she showed a section of the wall that was missing, a good 60, 70-foot section that was missing, with the ground as exactly described. And she said on the other side of the wall, on the Mexico side, the coyotes have dug trenches, ditches. So when they come up to the border, you can't see them as you look over the grade from where the wall is. They're below that line. So they can get their trafficked individuals all the way up to the fence. And then once they see that the way is clear, then they pop up and send them over that gap, through that gap, over the grading, and boom, they're on the road and they're gone. Green Badger Outdoors says in the YouTube chat, she could be Surgeon General. Yes, she could. Yes, she could. Yes, she could. And Ken Lee also says the Biden admin is filled with people who have failed up. Oh, failed up massively. Massively. In fact, I think this administration has created a whole new class of failing upward. Because now we've gone from just failing upward into a better bureaucratic position to failing upward into the cabinet. I mean, look at Becerra. The man is a human garbage heap. He was the worst AG California has ever had, and I'm including Harris. Yet he is the director of HHS. And we have Dr. Levine, who helped kill elderly in Pennsylvania by putting COVID-positive patients into nursing homes, just like they did in New York and New Jersey and Michigan and California. And she's the assistant head of HHS? Oh, yeah. No, this administration has made Olympic level failing upwards. Of course, climate change had to be pounded. I've heard a number of studies recently from people whom I trust that say if everybody did their part and cut carbon emissions completely within the next 20, 30 years, we would reduce the heating level in the atmosphere in 100 years by exactly 0.05 degrees centigrade. Not 5 degrees, not 0.5, 0.05 degrees centigrade. But I'm sure I'm a climate denier, and we'll get yanked for that. Yeah, of course, we don't need a climate crisis to create jobs, as I said in my notes. Now, I will say I was very surprised and very, very heartened to hear him say that we are going to stand up and maintain our presence in the Indo-Pacific theater. Good for you, Joe. Good for you. Stand by your guns. Literally, stand by your guns. Don't take any crap from the Chinese in the South China Sea. Don't let them come near Taiwan. Kick them out of the Philippines waters. Kick them out of the Vietnamese waters. Do your job. Freedom of navigation. Do your job. So good for you. Good for you. He did, of course, say that America is an idea. During his first end to the speech, he had actually two ends to the speech tonight. But yes, America is an idea. No, it's a country based on a creed. But America's not an idea. And I did have to write down, because I mean, where he quadruple clutched on the word exclamation. He exclamation, but we all know that that's his stutter, so can't make fun of that. He got applause for pulling out of Afghanistan. We should be out there in the next 3 days, actually. We shouldn't be there at all. We should be gone. Instead, we're going to pull out whether or not we're under fire, because he's staying past the date that we signed the peace treaty for. Now, say what you will about whether or not you can trust the Taliban. We made a deal. We made a deal that we would be out by May 1st if they stopped coming after us, and they did. There have been the odd border posts being blown up, but for the most part, the Taliban's been sitting on their hands. We haven't had an American service person die in Afghanistan since February of last year. And we're going to be there still come May 1st, which means the Taliban has, according to their ideas, every right to open up with everything they've got. And if you don't think they've been sitting on ordnance, pardon me, I almost said ordinance. If you don't think they've been sitting on ordnance, waiting to run supreme, you ain't been paying attention. But he got applause for that. White supremacy. What white supremacy? Come on. All this anti-Asian hate crime has been mainly one race who's not white committing this crime. In fact, of course, he had to hit on systemic racism too. Yes, there's systemic racism, and it's all in the hands of the Democrats. I want to find a story for you real quickly regarding anti-Asian hate crime. I think I saw it on the Daily Wire earlier today. It's going to take me a second to find it, but I'm definitely going to find it. I was not planning on covering it, but Sleepy Joe made a point of bringing up this thing, so it's incumbent upon me to discuss it. Let's see here. Here we go. Got it. This is from today, Daily Wire by Ash Show. Suspect arrested in vicious attack against Asian American man. Democrats silent despite Stop Asian Hate rhetoric. A suspect has been arrested in the attack against a 61-year-old Asian man that happened Friday night in East Harlem. The suspect, 49-year-old Gerald Powell, is charged with attacking Yao Pan Ma while he was collecting cans. Powell, who is black, allegedly attacked Ma from behind in an unprovoked attack and repeatedly stomped on him as he lay on the ground. WABC reported. Ma's family says he is still in a coma following the attack. Powell was taken into custody after tips from the community poured in. He was reportedly seen at a shelter near where the attack happened. He was arrested and charged with the charges upgraded Tuesday to attempted murder and assault as a hate crime. According to Powell, Ma started it. Just so you know. That is the narrative at the moment. Ma started it. And have you heard a word about this from any of the Democrats? Have you heard one word about any of this? Ken Lee says in the YouTube chat that the Chinese islands are washing away. Really? Really? I'm going to have to look that up. He refers to it as tofu construction. Oh, man, I can't wait to check that out. Thank you. You made my night with that one, Ken. You made my night. Thank you so much. I can't wait to look into that further. Okay, so George Floyd Policing Act, of course, brought up. I saw an excellent interview from earlier today with the Detroit Chief of Police, and he said in no uncertain terms that bill, if passed, would completely destroy policing in America as we know it. Because what it would do is it would take away all qualified immunity from police officers. It wouldn't take it away from city officials, of course, but it would take it away from police officers. which means that if an officer did something that a suspect, or a community member for that matter, didn't like, they could take the officer to court in civil court, where of course the evidence only has to be a preponderance of the evidence, not beyond a reasonable doubt, and the officer would be forced to pay for his own legal fees, or their own legal fees. They would not have the city backing them in the suit. Which means, of course, that if you broke a guy's finger while arresting him and he sued you for assault and battery, even if he had no case, you'd still have to have representation in court, which means it's coming out of your pocket, which means you can't afford to be a cop anymore, and you quit, and you file bankruptcy, and your life's over. That's what the George Floyd Policing Act would create. Now, Tim Scott's bill from last year, Senator Tim Scott, black Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, Tim Scott's bill would have created a different type of qualified immunity where it would not be the individual who had it, it would be the city that had it, and it would cover everyone. So it would change the nature of qualified immunity, but it wouldn't completely take it away. And the Democrats refused to even vote on that bill. They filibustered it. You know one of the Democrats who filibustered it? Kamala Harris. Then Senator Harris filibustered Tim Scott's police reform bill. And there are some Republicans who didn't like Tim Scott for putting that bill forward. They said he was kowtowing to the left, to BLM, and they didn't appreciate it. But they were still behind it. It was the Democrats who blocked it. Democrats who blocked it. Let's see. Systemic racism, as I said. That got... gun control. What can I say about Sleepy Joe and gun control? He's a complete liar. Not one thing he said was true. Not one thing he said. I don't even need to go into it. You guys know all of it. Just everything he said was a lie. And, of course, 100 rounds. How many times have you ever seen someone with a 100-round drum magazine for an AR walking around? I've seen it once. I've been to the range hundreds of times. I've been to dozens of ranges hundreds of times in my life. And I've seen one guy with a 100-round drum magazine. And you know what? It didn't work. He was so proud of it. It took him 10 minutes to load the thing. He got it out there, and it didn't work. It was a piece of junk. Lucky you. And it's not up to you, Joe, to decide how many rounds I need or don't need. You're not the arbiter of need. The Second Amendment doesn't say anything about need. It says right shall not be infringed. Keep and bear arms. No one was prevented from having any type of firearm. During the Revolutionary War, you could own a ship with cannons if you wanted to. You could build a privateer and the government would sign off on the cannons. You could make your own firearms when you were in early America. You didn't need someone to make it for you. Heck, there weren't serial numbers until the 50s. High-capacity magazines. There's no such thing. Magazines have a capacity. Some have more than others. That's like saying a car that has a 20-gallon tank has a high-capacity gas tank. No, it has a 20-gallon tank. Seriously. But again, lie after lie after lie. No amendment is absolute. If that's the case, folks, if no amendment is absolute, I'm going to stop paying taxes. Honestly, if that's the case, then I have the right to stop paying taxes. Now let's see who winds up in jail first. Probably me. So we talked about immigration, high-tech security at the border. I do not agree with amnesty in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to just say that. I do not agree with amnesty. And I just have a couple more things and we're done. Of course, he lied about Trump's immigration. We did not dismantle the immigration system. It was not working under Obama and Biden. After they created catch and release, numbers went horribly wrong. They surged under Trump in 2019, and we shut it down. We shut it down, and it didn't surge again until, oddly enough, January 2020, when border crossings suddenly shot up massively and are now at record levels. We have more kids in custody now than we ever have in the past. When they were screaming about Trump having temporary facilities open, shut down these facilities, that's what Harris said. She said in front of microphones, in front of cameras, when I'm elected president, she was running at the time, I will shut down these facilities. So what happens? She gets into office with her boyfriend, not to be confused with Billy Brown, and they open them back up within weeks. And they create more. And they create more. And they create more. And now we've got kids in San Antonio possibly being sexually abused in these temporary facilities. Texas is investigating claims on that right now. Another facility in San Antonio was shut down, just suddenly shut down. There were no facilities for the kids, aside from cots and a bathroom. But Trump was the bad guy, folks. Trump was the bad guy. And he did say one thing. I think I got it. This is my last thing. I'm pretty sure Biden said that there are such things as man-made and violent-made natural disasters. Man-made and violent-made natural disasters. And with that, I am out. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. The chats were great. And again, Ken Lee, Green Badger Outdoors, and SRS, thanks so much for being there tonight. Really appreciate it. And David has been great in the chats as well. Really thank you for being here. So many others were here tonight. I can't thank you enough for all your time. So tomorrow morning, man, it's late for me. This is an hour past my bedtime almost. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, I will be starting my live stream. The first chapter of The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt. I'll be starting a brand new game there, so we'll get into that. That will be on Trovo, DLive, and Twitch. Look for those. In case you care to, here's the URL for DLive, dlive.tv/AHNC. I also do the news rodeo there every day at 4 p.m. Eastern. Trovo and DLive get the whole show, not just the half show that YouTube usually gets, because I can say things more fully in the second half of the show than I can due to YouTube's restrictions. So please check that out. And DLive, of course, has an excellent app for your iPhone or Android. So thank you both again so much for your time tonight. Whenever we see you, I hope it's soon. Be well. God bless. Happy trails. Let's forget this night ever happened. Bye-bye.